So, Zohran Mamdani won. The 34-year-old progressive is going to be the first Muslim mayor of New York City, in what is a huge moment for the progressive left in America. I'm sure I'm not alone in feeling that this election is to 2025 what AOC was in 2018 and Bernie in 2016. And Mamdani did this while going up not just against the right, but against the leadership of the Democratic Party. Now, an easy response to this happening is to say that, of course Mamdani won. It's New York City. Of course the most far-left candidate is going to win. But this is incorrect. Other than the fact that New York City's mayor right up until now was a very conservative former Republican and not on the left, Zohran Mamdani's victory was in fact the result of a bunch of different, highly contingent factors, which is to say, nothing about this was guaranteed. This was the result of Mamdani's campaign taking advantage of the groundwork done by hard-working progressive activists years before, the sudden political opportunities that rose in the past year, and of Mamdani's personal talents as a politician. And the reason why I'm making this video is that I don't want Mamdani's victory to just be a one-off. I want the left to learn from how Mamdani and his team made this happen, so we on the progressive left can make this happen everywhere. I'm going to break down what I see to be the main factors in Mamdani's victory into three categories. First, there are the categories that are not repeatable. These are the factors that are unique and unpredictable and cannot be recreated. These are the factors that Mamdani's campaign and the left did not create but could take advantage of. Then there are what I call repeatable factors. These are things that the progressive left can work to directly copy throughout the entire country. Then there are the factors that aren't directly repeatable, but what I call learnable. For example, Mamdani's personal charisma that helps him connect with people. Those are the three categories of factors I will cover. Mamdani's victory was a pressure test of progressive left ideas, under fire from both the right and establishment Democrats. With Trump and the right rapidly amping up their authoritarianism, now is the time for the left to become organized, focused, and strategic about wielding power and achieving representation. And with this campaign, Mamdani has shown us how we can do that, if we can learn. So let's get started. I believe that a big part of wisdom is understanding which things in life are in your control and which are not. There were a lot of great things from Mamdani's campaign that we on the left can recreate, but we have to be honest about which factors are just out of our control, because we can learn a lot from these too. So let's talk about the race itself. New York City's former mayor, Eric Adams, the conservative former Republican I mentioned earlier, would have probably been up for an easy re-election for another term, if it weren't for the fact that he was suddenly indicted for corruption in September of 2024, alleging that Eric Adams defrauded the city for millions of dollars in public funds and took bribes from foreign nationals in exchange for allowing an unsafe building to open. The case ended up never going to court. Want to know why? Because as soon as Trump got into office, he had the Department of Justice drop the charges. Because crime is legal now. Well, it turns out that most New Yorkers still care about the law, even if our government doesn't, and Eric Adams' poll numbers tanked, making him incredibly vulnerable. This is what opened up the opportunity for a bunch of different candidates to step up to run for mayor, including Zohran Mamdani, who announced his candidacy the month after the indictment. This was the first unpredictable domino to fall. A mayor who seemed on track for an easy re-election suddenly brought down by his own alleged crimes. The other factor was the fact that the establishment candidate in this race, and Mamdani's primary opponent, was none other than Andrew Cuomo, who was, let's just say, uniquely flawed as a candidate. First, we have the nursing home scandal. Near the beginning of the COVID-19 outbreak, Cuomo, the governor at the time, gave an order that forced nursing homes to accept stable patients that either had COVID or were suspected of having COVID. Hospitals in New York were running out of capacity, and Cuomo was trying to free up space for critical patients that needed to be in the hospital. To be fair to Cuomo, this is obviously a tough situation to deal with, but forcing nursing homes to accept people who had COVID against the protests of healthcare professionals and his own staff was obviously a horrific decision, and it was discovered that Cuomo's administration covered up thousands of these deaths by fudging the numbers. This alone could have tanked any politician, but in 2021, an investigation from New York's Attorney General found that Governor Cuomo had sexually harassed at least 11 women, including government employees. It was this scandal that finally led Cuomo to resign. This is the candidate that was Mamdani's main opponent, the representative of the establishment in this race, a walking liability in human form, and this revealed itself in polling, where even the people who said they planned to vote for Cuomo were way less enthusiastic about doing so, compared to people who were planning on voting for Mamdani. This was the perfect storm of opportunity that no one could have predicted beforehand, for the entrenched mayor of New York City to suddenly be taken down by a giant scandal, creating a sudden opportunity for new candidates, and for the only viable opposition to have such horrible, obvious flaws on his record. But an opportunity means nothing if you don't have the capability to act on it, so that's what we'll talk about next. I'm now going to go over the factors in Mamdani's campaign that are what I consider to be repeatable, factors that the left and activists around the country can implement and copy almost one-to-one. And the first factor I'll discuss here is the fact that New York City has ranked choice voting. It's a voting system that was passed in New York City all the way back in 2019. Seems like a long time ago, right? Well, it's exactly these kinds of structural moves that can pay off in the long run and lead to moments like this. But what is ranked choice voting? Typically, when you vote in an election, you can only choose one candidate, and whoever gets the most votes wins. This is what can lead to the concept of the wasted vote. Think about the debates over voting for third parties, where people want to vote for the candidate that represents their values the best, but don't want to waste their votes on a candidate that is simply not viable. Well, in a ranked choice voting system, you can vote for multiple candidates. In New York's case, up to 5. In this system, you can put a first choice candidate, but then also select a second choice, or more. Then the votes are counted. If no one gets more than 50% of the votes, then the candidates who had the least votes are eliminated, but those votes aren't wasted. If you vote for a candidate that is eliminated, your second choice votes are then transferred to your second choice candidate. Here's why this matters. This is a system that allows for many more ideas and candidates to have a fighting chance, and it allows voters to express their preferences much more than being made to vote for whoever they think will have the best chance to win. It's a straightforward pro-democracy system, and crucially for the left, it allows progressive candidates to campaign as a team instead of against each other. This is why the two main progressive candidates in this race, Mamdani and Brad Lander, didn't have to compete, but instead worked together, resulting in campaign videos like this.
Hey!
Hey, good morning.
How's it going?
Please go second.
No, I insist you go second.
How about I go first and you go second?
Well,
We both love New York City.
and that's why it's so important to not send scandal-ridden, corrupt Andrew Cuomo to City Hall.
New Yorkers deserve so much better than a disgraced creep.
Agreed.
You want to tell him?
You go first.
Nah, you go first.
Let's do it together.
We're cross-endorsing.
Brad and I are officially telling our supporters.
Rank
I'm your
me number one, rank
Brad
Zohran number two. Let's send Andrew Cuomo.
Back to the suburbs.
How often do you see that in politics? The structure of ranked choice voting allows candidates that might otherwise not have the political capital of establishment players to work as a coalition, focusing their attacks on Andrew Cuomo. And this is in fact what allowed Mamdani to win the Democratic primary over Andrew Cuomo. The decisive round where Mamdani secured the nomination was when Brad Lander was eliminated, and over 100,000 of his second choice votes were transferred to Mamdani, giving him the nomination. Now, I'm not saying that getting ranked choice voting across the country means that progressive candidates will automatically start winning, but it fundamentally changes how campaigning works. Imagine if Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren could campaign with each other instead of against each other like in the 2020 election. Infighting among the left has historically been one of our greatest weaknesses, and ranked choice voting allows many progressive candidates to campaign together as a unified front to get our message out to voters. I cannot say definitively that Mamdani would not have won without ranked choice voting, but it was a huge factor, and getting ranked choice voting is one of the most important things that we on the left can continue to promote to make progressive candidates and even third parties viable in our government. This is one of those procedural, wonky factors that doesn't get the same headlines as other big issues, but is extremely important. And I want this election to be another chance to remind everyone about how important it is, and to look for chances to pass ranked choice voting wherever you live. The second factor is one that I'll spend less time on, because it seems obvious, but it's important to point out. Mamdani's campaign put together an army of volunteers that canvassed and went door to door. And the campaign was able to do this by utilizing tech created by activists to onboard interested volunteers, and the volunteers were then organized by a mature NYC DSA organization that has been operating for over a decade. Now, I'm not making this video to say that the left needs to use any one specific piece of software or social media platform, or organize with a specific organization. The point of this is that real-life campaigning still matters, and smart use of tech can be a true force multiplier that can outperform the millions of dollars establishment candidates have at their disposal. But I now want to focus on what is perhaps the most important set of factors in Mamdani's win, the more intangible factors that are what I call non-repeatable but learnable. I'm of course talking about the fact that Mamdani is obviously a very gifted speaker. He has a natural charisma that allows him to diffuse hostile interviews and get skeptical people to just like him as a person. The fact is that no amount of ranked choice voting or volunteer work can save a candidate that doesn't know how to connect with people or defend their ideas, and Mamdani has been knocking it out of the park every time I've seen him speak. Now, these factors are not repeatable. It's not like a different candidate can just directly copy his entire mind and personality. But what is learnable is his approach, how he reframes challenges and presents his policies. With Mamdani, there are many great interviews and moments that I could cover, but for the purposes of this video, I've collected just a few of what I consider to be standout moments that demonstrate how Mamdani showed masterful use of rhetoric. My first example is how Mamdani answers a question about his policing policies. During the George Floyd protests in 2020, ideas about community safety began being widely discussed, and one of the main ideas discussed was how the police should not be handling mental health checks and homelessness and other community needs. That what are essentially health issues should not be treated as criminal issues, since the police have a tendency to escalate these situations. Instead, they should be handled by trained professionals who are given the resources to tackle these community issues. The thing is, these policies were labeled defund the police. It was framed as an anti-police idea, allowing reactionaries to say that the people who wanted this wanted to eliminate policing, which is an idea that scares most people. The thing is, the ideas that have been labeled defund the police are policies that Mamdani plans to implement, which leads him to getting lots of questions from interviewers. Let's see how Mamdani masterfully handles this issue.
People are afraid if they elect you, you're going to take your eye off the ball on making New York a safer place. You're going to be hostile towards the police. You're going to change the police commissioner. What do you tell those people who are concerned about safety, quality of life issues, homelessness?
It is
as job number one.
It is a critical
Keeping
focus.
New Yorkers safe.
Absolutely.
Making sure that when kids walk to school, they can walk there safely. When they're in school,
Absolutely.
You like cops.
Look, yes,
you like police officers.
Our police officers are going to be the ones we partner with to deliver public safety. And I just want to say a few things, which is that when you ask New Yorkers, where do they feel least safe? They'll often tell you, when they're using public transit. They'll say, when I'm on the subway, when I'm in the train, I'll see a homelessness crisis, a mental health crisis, and we've asked cops to be responsible for these crises, whereas their jobs should really be focusing on serious crimes. And so our vision is allow officers to focus on shootings and murders and the serious crimes that we know New Yorkers are concerned about, and have a Department of Community Safety that deals with the mental health crisis, that deals with homelessness, that actually deploys dedicated teams of mental health outreach workers to the 100 subway stations with the highest rates of these incidents to take those New Yorkers out of the system of the subway and connect them with the services that they need.
The reason why this answer is so great, and something the left needs to learn from, is that he took an idea that is seen as anti-police and reframed it as actually being pro-police, without changing the underlying principles or policy one bit. During the time of the George Floyd protests, I agreed with many of the ideas that activists were putting out there, with the idea of having trained professionals handle many non-violent issues instead of the police. What I didn't like were the slogans and how the left went about this. Things like abolish the police and defund the police might sound good to people who love being radical, but this resulted in me having to have long, tedious arguments with people where I had to explain that defunding the police doesn't mean literally having no law enforcement. And we have to be honest, a lot of people still have that classic view of cops as being friendly good guys who catch robbers and stuff. But Mamdani got around this by reframing the issue, and he didn't have to compromise his ideas or principles to do it. The policy remains the same, but instead of being about being anti-police, it's sold to people as reducing the burdens on police officers, on freeing them to do the work that they are best suited to do. This is something the left can and should learn from. Marketing matters. Optics matter. Mamdani never would have gotten this far if he talked and acted like a lot of online leftists, and the fact is, Mamdani has shown us that we don't have to change or compromise our ideas to sell them to regular people. My next example is how Mamdani diffused a classic attack used against progressives and newcomers, the experience problem. Establishment candidates tend to have less inspiring policies and personalities, and they tend to have been working in their government for longer than progressive ones, so one of the biggest critiques they like to use against younger progressive candidates is the accusation that they don't have experience. They're hoping that nervous voters will bet on the devil they know instead of trying something new, and the way that Mamdani handled this issue was brutal.
What the Assemblyman said is he has no experience. And this is not a job for someone who has no management experience to run 300,000 people, no financial experience to run $115 billion budget. This is not a job for a first-timer. Any day, you could have a hurricane, you have, God forbid, a 9/11, a health pandemic. If you don't know what you're doing, people could die.
Mr. Mamdani, you want to respond?
And if we have a health pandemic, then why would New Yorkers turn back to the governor who sent seniors to their death in nursing homes? That's the kind of experience that's on offer here today. What I don't have in experience, I make up for in integrity. And what you don't have in integrity, you could never make up for in experience.
Yes. Yeah.
Another masterful showcase of rhetorical judo. Most people fear change, and they see being in office as like being a doctor or a pilot. Experience matters. But what the progressive left can do is point out that the experience doesn't matter if it's experience doing all the wrong things. Mamdani handled the challenge in a way that showed no hesitation or defensiveness. He tackled the accusation directly, acknowledging that he might not have experience like Cuomo does, but also instantly put the focus back on Cuomo's faults. It reminded the audience that the contest is not about experience, but who would be the better leader. And as the left goes forward and continues the campaign of voting out establishment Democrats and electing more principled progressive leaders, this is a move that we're going to have to use again and again, because establishment candidates and the media aren't going to stop with this line of attack. Then there's how Mamdani handled the Israel issue. Now, Israeli-Palestinian issues are often considered to be a third rail in New York City politics, just like the literal third rails in their subways. If you touch it, you die. New York City is home to the largest Jewish population outside of Israel, and being very pro-Israel has been a requirement for any politician in the city for decades. Mamdani has rejected this, and has been prominently pro-Palestine and even actively anti-Zionist. Both Cuomo and the Republican nominee Sliwa thought they really had Mamdani on this, and trying to attack Mamdani on this is one of the few things they teamed up on. Now, the way that Mamdani handled this isn't necessarily any one standout moment, but a very well thought out campaign of consistent and clear messaging. First, he worked with and secured endorsements from progressive Jewish groups that were also against the actions of the Israeli government. He made a point of meeting with Jewish community leaders in different synagogues. But most importantly, he framed his campaign and platform as the one that was actually the most concerned with anti-Semitism, with actual plans to fund hate crime prevention, repeatedly bringing up anti-Semitic hate as a huge problem, and clearly distinguishing between criticism of Israel's government and hatred for Jewish people as a group.
And I know that a number of Jewish New Yorkers are seeing a rising anti-Semitism in this city, and they want a mayor who can actually address it directly. And I'm committed to doing that, increasing funding for hate crime prevention programs, ensuring that police continue to have a presence outside of synagogues and temples during the high holy days, and that we are actually implementing a curriculum that celebrates the breadth and the beauty of Jewish New Yorkers right here in New York City. Because too often, frankly, the language is only, will you protect Jewish New Yorkers? It also has to be, will you celebrate and cherish those New Yorkers? And I will do that for Jewish New Yorkers and for every New Yorker, because this is their city.
Now, all this I think is fairly obvious. It's not exactly deep analysis to say that pro-Palestine activists should use the same framing, but there's one more move Mamdani made that I want to highlight. Mamdani's opponents repeatedly use his Muslim identity against him. In one instance, Andrew Cuomo laughed along when a conservative radio host said that Mamdani would have cheered for 9/11. There are many more examples of this, each one more disgusting than the last, where people on the right, including the great Charlie Kirk, explicitly called Mamdani a jihadist and tied him to 9/11. Again, Mamdani did something really smart, and he made his Muslim identity and these attacks against him a point of connection with people who were worried about anti-Semitism.
I've said at every opportunity that there is no room for anti-Semitism in this city, in this country. And I've said that because that is something I personally believe. I get messages that say the only good Muslim is a dead Muslim. I get threats on my life, and I try not to talk about it. Because the function of racism, as Toni Morrison said, is distraction. My focus has always been on making this a city that's affordable, on making this a city that every New Yorker sees themselves in. And the thing that's made me proudest in this campaign is that the strength of our movement is built on our ability to have built something across Jewish and Muslim New Yorkers, across New Yorkers of all faiths and all backgrounds and all boroughs.
Mamdani pulled off something that seems obvious in hindsight, but very few people have been able to do successfully. The cynical move that the establishment tried to use against Mamdani was to get Jewish voters to distrust him for his Muslim background, as an extension of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But Mamdani put in the work, and he was able to actually use his Muslim background as a way to relate to Jewish voters by pointing out their shared status as minorities that both face ongoing discrimination. Finally, this video would be incomplete if I didn't talk about Mamdani's brutal stunt in the final mayoral debate. While the other examples highlight Mamdani's rhetorical skill, this example highlights his understanding of the media environment. As I've said in my previous videos, a law of the age of mass media is that appearances are reality, and spectacle can overcome almost anything else, and I've said that this is something that the right understands very well. In this case, Cuomo's 11 or more cases of sexual harassment, while bad, are just a statistic to most people. Even if the average voter knows about the story and believes it's real, if enough time passes and enough distractions are thrown out, a lot of people can end up forgetting about it when it's time to vote. So Mamdani's campaign fixed this with this moment.
Mr. Cuomo, in 2021, 13 different women who worked in your administration credibly accused you of sexual harassment. Since then, you have spent more than $20 million in taxpayer funds to defend yourself, all while describing these allegations as entirely political. You have even gone so far as to legally go after these women. One of those women, Charlotte Bennett, is here in the audience this evening. You sought to access her private gynecological records. She cannot speak up for herself because you lodged a defamation case against her. I, however, can speak. What do you say to the 13 women that you sexually harassed?
That is how you make what was just a statistic into a reality. The mere physical presence of one of the accusers in the room is what made the scandal real for so many people, and Mamdani fully capitalized on it, framing himself as on the side of the victims and against the perpetrator. Yeah, it was a political stunt, but it was one that was based in reality, and it worked, and it simultaneously allowed Mamdani to diffuse the perception that he was too young or unable to stand up to Trump. The brutality of the move showed that Mamdani is able to play hardball and stand up to older and, yes, more experienced politicians. The common thread through the examples I showed are Mamdani's deep understanding of media mechanics and his ability to directly answer questions while controlling the framing instead of playing within the frame established by his opponents in the media. Mamdani's personal charisma definitely helped with this, but what I really want to get across is that what Mamdani did here is fundamentally learnable by others. We on the progressive left are used to feeling like underdogs, and this makes sense. We are the side that challenges power in entrenched systems, which is always a disadvantage. But one thing that we need to remember is that our ideas are in fact easy to sell. Our ideas don't actually require anyone to buy into any complex ideologies. They are fundamentally pro-human and pro-human well-being. And when explained properly, our ideas conform with human intuitions about fairness and justice, and they work when implemented in real life. The challenge is in selling change to people who have been trained by our media to fear change. Mamdani ran a campaign focused on selling the outcomes of his policies, not the label or the ideology behind it, and by utilizing framing and language that was constructive in nature. We will make New York City better for everyone, even billionaires. We want to work with cops to make New York City better, etc. The underlying policies and principles don't change, the packaging does, and when it's pulled off right, it works, just like Bernie showed us, just like AOC showed us, and now how Mamdani has shown us. So those are what I see to be the main factors in Mamdani's win, and if you take away anything from this video, is that this win was not guaranteed. And the feeling I want us on the left to have about this is hope and optimism, but also an understanding of the role that we all have to play to build on this to win. I want Mamdani to be a model for how the left can communicate our ideas in a media landscape that is hostile to them, and how to be diplomatic while not changing our principles. Mamdani did almost everything right in this campaign, but the fundamental basis of it all were the ideas, the policies, because they are ideas that get people passionate about voting once they hear about them. They're what establishment Democrats have been refusing to offer for so long. So that was my quick take on Mamdani's incredible win. I am, like many of you, incredibly happy about this outcome, but I can't say that I'm surprised. There's a lot more about Mamdani's campaigning style and rhetoric that I can and want to comment on, and the after effects of this win are yet to be seen. For one, I'm waiting to see how Trump and Democratic leadership are going to react to this win. Even if you know nothing about Mamdani's policies, it's very illuminating to watch how the right has been responding to him. When they go after a boring Democrat like Biden or Jeffries, they use mockery. But when it comes to Mamdani, they're showing outright fear, and I'm waiting to see how many other progressive players will come out to turn up the heat. And I'm waiting to see how far Trump and the Republicans are willing to go to deal with a real threat to them. Trump and other Republicans have already explicitly said they want to deport Mamdani, and as ridiculous as this sounds, I'm not willing to put anything past the Trump administration at this point. Will they really try and deport Mamdani? Will they do nothing? Even if they try, I expect that this will create a large and highly visible backlash from the public, and I fully expect that Mamdani would be ready and able to utilize the media and take control of the discourse if that were to happen. I'll certainly be watching what happens after this, but rest assured that this won't be my last video about this. This was just a quick take that I wanted to get out there that quickly captured what I think Mamdani's campaign did right. And I hope it can get people thinking about how we can create and elect more Mamdanis around the whole country. So thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, please make sure to leave your thoughts below in the comments and give this video a like. If you really like what I do, I encourage you to check out my Patreon where I'm about to add new personalized benefits for patrons. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you again real soon.